Okay, so good news is the pump and filter has arrived. So first thing is to change the fuel filter, and then I will put the pump in. I'm going to test the pump first. Not ideal to test them dry, however I'll just activate it for a couple of seconds just to ensure its functionality and it works. Otherwise, if I put it in the fuel tank, it'll get contaminated, and then returning it isn't really ideal because the parcel will smell of fuel. So that's what I'm going to do now, the fuel filter. Bit of a time lapse. Now, as we can see there, put the filter out, and now we've got a bleed screw on the top here, and within the new filter kit you get a little crush washer which sits under here. Now I can see on here that this is rounded off, so I'm going to have to get these sort of crimps on that and just try and loosen this bleed screw from here, or bleed bolt. Once I release that, I can connect the new pump, see if that works, and then immerse it in the fuel tank and install that, and then run VCDS again, and then pump fuel into the fuel filter to prime it until fuel comes out the top. And then I can tighten up on this, run VCDS again, prime it, and that will prime all the fuel lines round to the tandem pump, and then we're ready to give it a start. Okay, so you can see here I've got the pump connected up but not submerged, just in case it doesn't work. So it's plugged in at the top. So when I turn the ignition on, we should hear that, like hear the motor come on. So I'll switch the ignition on now. Good, we can hear that worked. So my next thing, I'll just check the fuel gauge now. I'll just get my camera sorted. So I'll put the ignition on, and then I'll move the float and just make sure that that reacts, or the fuel gauge reacts with the float, and that tells us the fuel sender unit works also. So at the moment, in fact, if I turn the lights on, might be a little bit better. So I'll move it up and down now. To full, down, and fully down. Good. So we can also see the fuel sender works as well. So it's now just a case of putting this fuel sender back into the fuel tank, put all that back in, put the seat back in, and then I'll purge the system. Time lapse. Okay, so I'm just going to go into VCDS now. Ignition's on, and I'm going to run the fuel pump until I get fuel coming out of the bleed screw on the fuel filter. So my director Bry and editor will be zooming in on my screen at this point. So into control module, select engine, basic settings, and we're going to be running the fuel pump, which now works. Click on, and then we're watching down here now. So again, Bri, if you just look onto that there, so that's now charging fuel through the lines, filling up the fuel filter housing, Baron Vaughan. and we can see fuel starting to come out now. Good, so fuel has now came out of the lead, so we'll just tighten up on that now. Put the new crush washer on. Just nip up on this. Clear that up. I'll just run it again to make sure that's not leaking. And starting to now, because it's not coming out there, it'll now be charging up the lines up to the tandem fuel pump. Okay, it's stopped there. It's done one cycle. So it says we've got to do it 3 times. So again, purging it again, and then I'll do it one more time. So we can hold it there. The next thing you'll see is in the car, and we'll see if we can start the engine easily. Okay, so we've primed the fuel lines now. Fuel filter's full. We then primed it 3 times, 30-second cycles, which is now primed and charged all the fuel lines up to the tandem pump, past the tandem pump and into the injector lines. So fingers crossed now, the car will start without too much struggle. The glow plugs don't work, so it may take a little longer than normal, but hopefully the car will start with no great effort or continuous cycle. Heard the fuel pump charge. You may or may not have heard that, but I did. There we are. Car started, no problem at all. Okay, now I'll rev it and keep it at a constant revs to see if it drops as fuel starvation like it did before. Keep it at 2000 revs. Down to idle. And again, it's not cutting out. So that, folks, is 100% fix. Right, just been out for a test drive there. So I've calibrated the steering, so me traction control light's gone off and the steering light. So all that's left on now is seatbelt light, because I haven't got it on, and the parking brake light, which goes off when I obviously take the parking brake off. And the fuel light has just come on. Of course I'm running out of fuel. However, everything else is hunky-dory. Temperature's sitting nicely at 90, which is great, so I don't need to change the thermostat. The only thing I've got now is a noise from the engine still. Now, nothing to do with the cam. I can tell past that noise that the engine is running quite sweet. It pulls well, turbo kicks in, everything seems spotty dog there. However, when I rev, just hear something binding now. It could be one of the auxiliary attachments, so either alternator pulley, aircon pulley, or it could be the actual auxiliary belt tensioner that's causing any of this noise. So to rule that out, I'm just going to slip the belt off and then start the car and then see if the noise disappears. If it does, then I can just check the pulleys on each of them that I've mentioned and then see if there's any play in the bearings. Right, so I've took the auxiliary belt off, so I'm just going to start her up now and see if the noise is gone. Okay, the noise has gone, so it's got to be a pulley. Either the aircon or alternator, or indeed the idler itself, or the tensioner. So I shall investigate a bit further. Okay, so we can see the belt's off. The first thing I've checked is the alternator pulley, and if we see what happens when I move it up and down, there is absolutely loads of movement in there, and it's hot. So unlucky for me, needs an alternator. However, lucky for me, it's easy to replace because it's easy accessible. Would have been a nightmare if it was the aircon pulley, the one down at the bottom there, which you can see there. So I'll get on Fleabay and get myself a little alternator ordered. Dilly dilly.